There are at least two theories, ladies and gentlemen, that claim that civilization began when Homo sapiens learned how to share information with efficiency that was absolutely unknown to other species. They both at least acknowledge the role of disinformation in shaping our brain and the development of cognitive functions. We have used them both for inventing the truths that were useful for us and recognizing them, and recognizing those given by the others as obvious deception. However, there has yet been no theory on how to use our brain to recognize disinformation in cyberspace. Luckily, there are many joint efforts to respond to that problem, to band together and to build security architecture for international resilience. This is really where the interests of the public and private sectors meet, because this is where the interests of ordinary citizens lie. For all the fine details of the session on being together against disinformation, where public sector meets private, let me invite Jonasz Syrowatka, Program Manager at Prague Security Studies Institute, Viktoras Daukšas, Head of Debunk EU, that's a Debunk EU initiative, Magdalena Wrzosek, Head of Strategic Analysis and Emerging Technologies team at NASC, and the host of this session, Nikos Saris, Project Coordinator at the Social Observatory for Disinformation and Social Media Analysis, SOMA.
Hello, do we take over from here? Okay, I assume that we do. So hello to our audience, hello to our very interesting panel. I would like to welcome you. I'm Nikos Saris. I have been invited to moderate this panel since I have been working for many years against this problem of disinformation, and in the last couple of years I am coordinating an initiative of the European Commission trying to operationalize the European Observatory Against Disinformation. We had been granted, there was a project called SOMA, which initiated in 2018 in November, that was tasked with setting up this project and this cooperation. We had been tasked to set up the technological infrastructure that would provide a collaboration platform to this collaborative community, and then to operationalize this community and bring together the private and the public sector to work against this world of disinformation. This has been going quite well. I must say, in these 2 years, we have managed to gather a community of around 90 organizations, mostly from Europe, but not only from Europe. And we have given them the space and the opportunity to work together and carry out collaborative investigations. Of course, collaboration is not easy, and mixing again the private and public sector is not easy as well, again, especially in this delicate space, this delicate fight against disinformation, where on the one side we have the official institutions and the governments and the platforms that are trying from their side to minimize disinformation. And on the other side, we have the private sector, who many times are skeptical against some players, some actors of the public sector. So we had to be careful on that. So the first decision was, what do we do? Do we allow the two areas to mix together, and what is the best way to make this possible? We decided that it is very useful to have to let all areas have their say, because all areas have specific expertise and specific resources that they can offer to this fight. So we have allowed this community to be multidisciplinary and also allowing both areas to be there. But we provided two different workspaces which allow also some privacy between the two areas, the private and the public areas, although also allowing them to work together in some specific investigations. We feel that this is very important. We have seen that there is a very good mix of expertise coming from the different type of stakeholders. So we have media organizations, we have research organizations, we have fact checkers, and we have also individual researchers that are there, and every one of them provides different piece of the puzzle, and of course local aspects play a very important role as different organizations coming from different countries and different areas in different countries can offer specific local and hyper-local expertise that can be very super useful to specific investigations. So from my side, I would like to stop there with this experience of this multidisciplinarity being super useful to such operations. And I would like to open the floor to our panelists, starting with Magdalena Zorzek. I hope I am using the right pronunciation. Magdalena, thank you very much for being with us. I would like to ask how much, if you think that state policies are adequate in this kind of operations, and would you lean towards more legislation or more protection of freedom of expression? We all know that there is a very thin line between those two approaches. So, what is your take on this? What do you think?
Thank you, Nikos, and hello to the Cybersec community around the world. Actually, unfortunately, I do not think that the state politics are adequate in this area, because if they were, we probably wouldn't sit here and discuss the subject. In my opinion, we came the long way since 2016 and the whole Cambridge Analytica problems, but we are still not in the right place. At the beginning of this month, the European Union published the assessment of the Code of Practice on Disinformation, which was actually trying to self-regulation of the digital platform, and well, it wasn't as satisfied as we thought it would be. So I do believe we need better regulation on the state level and also on the international level. But the real challenge here is to have the good cooperation in place between the private sector, the public sector, and the academia. Because the way I see it, it's all about the data and how in the modern world, your own data could be weaponized against you somehow. So to really regulate this area, we really need among cooperation between the sectors. Otherwise, it would work. And regarding the second part of the questions, I hope we don't have to choose between more legislation and more protection of freedom of expression, because if we had, it would mean that our legislation is really cricket at the very beginning. You know, I believe this legislation we would put in place to help fighting disinformation should be at the very beginning connected with protection of freedom of expression, but also protection of the data of the citizens, because that was the main problem during the last election in the United States or during the Brexit. And just because we don't have company like Cambridge Analytica anymore, it doesn't mean that we don't have this mechanism in place, because technology is already here. So we really need to find a way to regulate it in the way that citizens would have the full ownership on their data. That's my idea about it.
Thank you very much. So we need legislation that will enable both protection of data and the protection of the freedom of expression. Victoras, would you like to say a few words on your take on this as well? Victoras Doxas, thank you again for being with us. Victoras, you're on mute.
1 second, I'm back. Hello, everybody. And Nikos, thank you for introduction. I would say that both parts are very important. And what legislation part could bring is a bit more clarity. Now it's really unclear, and there are many different laws in different member states, and it's not clear what is prohibited, what is allowed, and there's a lot of gray lines that disinformation actors are using. And that's a big problem, because generally they're using our democracy values against our democracy, and they're attacking it. And the regulation is very different in different countries, and it's not clear. So I would say that the most important part would be to bring more clarity and more agreement between member states. So we would have some regulations and agreement between countries, what is what and how do we define that.
Thank you very much. That's also very, very important alignment, so that we have a common European line, and together we set the same type of legislation in this area. Jonas Sirovatka. Hello, Jonas. Can you also give us your opinion on the same question?
Absolutely, it's nice to be here with you. Good afternoon from Prague. Well, I would maybe add like a bit different thing or a bit different angle, which I think it's crucial for understanding of the role of the state in this whole area. I would argue that definitely like the whole debate about the freedom of expression is very important and very needed in this area. However, when we are thinking about the freedom of expression, we also have to kind of take into account the responsibility for the expression. That, let's say, the to be free also has to be clearly attributed to. We have to be able to help responsible who are kind of having these expressions. And I think that here is actually the great role of the state and legislation and regulation in a way, because currently my understanding of online sphere is that sort of lawless, whereas various actors are having a sense that they can enter into this sphere and, let's say, to manifest themselves without any regulation. And I found very important for a state to kind of step in and be able to apply its own laws, its own limitations also in this area. And though in this case we are not speaking only about disinformation, which may be harmful, for instance, for state security, but also about the more nuanced cases such as spreading hatred against various communities and such like.
Can hear you, Nikos.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? You should be able to hear me now, right?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, thanks. So much has been said and is being proposed on ways to combat disinformation. First, looking at the means against disinformation, which do you think would be the best avenue? Technological tools as automatic fact-checking, analysis, collaborative tools and the like, or investing more human resources to investigate research and fact-checking? So is it more technology that is missing or more human hands? What do you think?
Thanks, Nikos. It's a very good question, and we do discuss this question a lot. And what we need to understand here, we are speaking generally about media space, but also we want to involve data. We also want to involve researchers, universities, other civil society organizations, think tanks, and it already becomes a cross-competence field, and we need to figure out how do we integrate all of this. Generally, if we would say that we just put more human at work, and that could be possible to increase the number of people working on that, and I think that is needed. But how then do we achieve a better efficiency? And in most cases, these journalists or fact checkers are working in media organizations, and as we all know, media as a general sector has real big difficulties in these particularly COVID times, with dropping revenues from advertisement and so on. So it's kind of a crisis in media field. And to have proper journalists who would do fact-checking analysis, these type of journalists are really expensive, and media organizations are typically not being able to have this kind of staff. And the question is how the staff should be funded. So it's a very theoretically increasing the workforce would be one of the solutions, but it's very important how this would be funded and how this would be done in a very transparent manner. On the other side, we have an automation part, and we have seen many different attempts to use artificial intelligence and to automate the processes fully. And all of these attempts have miserably failed. And there is no one AI working and being able to counter disinformation and misinformation, to catch everything. And that still is not possible. And I believe that this will be not possible for a very, very long time. Because AI can spot some particular cases, but AI cannot tell what is truth or what is not. And in these days, we see that there's a lot of cases when information, it's good or bad, depending on which camp is it looked in for. So I think the answer is in between, and we need to look on what human tasks could be automated so humans could focus on more creative work and become more productive than they are right now. That could be an example. So how do we filter out information better so journalists and researchers would have a better data sets and be able to work with them? The other part I see as a big problem is that journalists are, they are journalists and they being able to write articles, but they are not data scientists and not data engineers or not Excel people. So most of the journalists really don't appreciate to spend too much time on Excel sheets. And this is again creates a problem. So then we need to add more analysts who would be able to work with the data, then provide the charts and the insights to the journalists so they could do the further work to publish it and to share it with their readers. So my suggestion would be to balance things out. So we need to use automation to create human work, to make human work more productive, to automate tasks that are repetitive. For example, selection of information. A good example would be, for example, we receive about 1 million content pieces each month, and we analyze them from about 2,000 domains that tend to publish disinformation. So that is a lot of content, and our team is not able to review every content piece from that million. So we need to focus on the most harmful stories. And here, AI as an initial selection method can help to figure out and predict which of the stories tend to be most harmful. And then we can use workforce to review that content. And later from that to produce the reports. So I think we need to use a mix, and we need to figure out how to find a similar process or more unified process between different organizations in different countries, so all of us would be more productive.
Thank you very much, Victor. That's a very elaborate answer. And I get your point. I get your point that human hands are good, but they're expensive and funds are not there. So we have to find them somewhere. And the organizations that fund these activities on their own do not have enough funds, as the organizations that fund the disinformation campaigns are usually much more richer than them. So one solution has to be found there, perhaps by institutions or governments providing more funds on these matters. And the other thing, the other side on technology, I also share your point that automation would be nice, but I have also not seen yet automation being at the level that it should be to be trusted blindfolded, let's say. So I do see useful things coming, but I also do not think that in our days we will see AFC, automatic fact checking, as they call it, being replacing. I would not even say replacing, but being the most of the resource helping in this fight. But I would also like to hear from you, since I know you're very much in this area and you have a lot of people working in this for many years. Uh, what is the best thing that you find in tools and the worst thing that you find in tools? So in what area have you found technology being most helpful now, today, and in what area being most weak, where you would like it to see achieving more? Victor, as if you could first comment on that, and then we will go to the other panelists as well.
Yeah, so it's a good question, a philosophical one. But from a practical standpoint, we all do understand that scaling workforce globally, it's a not very scalable solution. It's not possible to hire now another 100,000 people work to counter disinformation around the world. So that is just not feasible from the budget sides. And the more human workers we would add on this, the costs would increase at the same pace. So more people, more costs. Better experts, higher costs. And the efficiency is in this way, it's not scalable. If we look from automation perspective, it's really expensive from the beginning to automate some of the processes. How data is gathered, how data is filtered, how and what type of scoring mechanisms are used to predict potentially harmful stories, and then to review them. So this part is scalable. It has higher costs in the beginning, but later, if we speak even that there are hundreds or thousands of analysts and journalists using the tools that were produced, makes all of these people work more productive. So what we have been able to reach up till now, we have automated about 50% of the manual tasks that the analysts are doing. So that is a really good growth for efficiency. And we see that now we are being able to produce many more reports comparing to like 3 years ago. So now, so that I would say that it's the core part of efficiency. The other part is collaboration between different organizations, and that's not a technological problem. That's more of attitude and how we look at different organizations together. So more cooperation between organizations also increase efficiency.
Thank you very much, Victor. Jonas, can we come to you in the same area? So human resources versus technology. Where do you see the weaknesses? Where do you see getting the most benefit, and what kind of mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for this question. Well, I think that it's really important to really distinguish and to really understand that actually what the countering to the disinformation actually means. And it's important to understand there are quite a lot of different areas in which like technology will play very different role. Like for instance, when we are talking about gathering let's say the samples of or like the examples of disinformation campaign or various narratives and following them in the information space. This is some place where we definitely would benefit from greater, let's say, from the greater advance of the technology and for the cooperation between the human researcher and AI. AI tools. However, on the other hand, there are a lot of other areas without which we will not be able to successfully tackle this challenge. For instance, when we are speaking about the education, about the reaching out to the communities that are vulnerable to various disinformation narrative, or whatever we are talking about the communication with the policymakers. So I found out that, of course, this debate, let's say, about the ratio between the technical, or like between the computational method and the human touch is very much relevant. But I think that it has to be even more nuanced and even more understand in the which sphere we are actually operating from, right? And in the end, all those spheres are equally important to succeed in tackling this challenge.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Magdalena, could we have your take on that as well?
Yeah, thank you. Where to begin? so, I believe that nowadays, in the ecosystem of information we do have, no amount of fact checkers will be enough. No amount of journalists who are trying to do the journalist the old-fashioned way, being gatekeepers somehow, will be enough, because that's not how the information is traveling right now. Right now, it's all about the click bites. It's all about going faster and pass the information as fast as possible. So regarding the human resources, I do believe that everyone should be kind of the fact checker, every citizen. And this is probably where we should put a lot of resources to educate the people. About the technology, well, I believe that there is a lot of need help from technology to support journalists right now. But to create these tools, we really need a strong cooperation between the sector to make it right and to make these tools really useful for the journalist. So to do it, for example, at first we need a good legislation which will help and create the right ecosystem to do it. But we also need a lot of support from online platforms, for example, to help really understand how the algorithms are working and what can we all do to help journalists and their work to do the fact checking faster and support all this process. So I do believe we need both. But in case of human resources, it's not about the journalist, it's about the whole society, which should support the fact checking in this area. And it was also mentioned the fundings and the money. Well, maybe we need to create the new information ecosystem, like something what I'm wondering all the time, why I'll be able to pay for streaming our favorite movies, for example, on Netflix, on HBO, but we are not so willingly paying for the content of the information. Maybe that's something when we should answer to ourselves. When the content is free, we pay for this content by our data, and how it follows is our data could be weaponized against us. It can be used to deliver us the fake news, which will like create anger and divide the societies. And this is something we really don't want. And we saw in 2016 how can it really divide the society. So maybe the answer is even bigger. Maybe we need to think about like redefined our information ecosystem, and maybe we have a will to pay for a content, because when we do, we have the more money in the ecosystem for the journalists to do the fact checking. It's not the clickbait, which will be the most important part of the information. And maybe it will be some kind of answer in this area.
So I see both of you also mentioning a lot citizens helping in this. So I take it we need media literacy efforts much more intense so that we can educate the public at all levels of education, the young, the older, so that they can recognize also what is disinformation and what is not, and they can use their critical thinking so that they can help this ecosystem, as you say. And the other thing that you mentioned also is this sustainability of this ecosystem, and this is also a big area of, do we open this to payments? Do we make credible content not free, or some part of it? That's a big discussion also that would need a different panel to touch. But another thing also that you have all touched is data. It all starts from data. So how can we verify if we don't have good access to data? So my next question would go to all of you, but starting from Ionas. Uh, how much do you think online platforms can help the platforms that provide data, Facebook, Twitter, and the like? Are they doing enough? Do you think that they're doing enough already? If not, how could we work on that? Should we just encourage them? Should we legislate and oblige them to help more? What do you think could and should be done in this area to help verification ecosystem? Jonas, please, can you start?
To be honest, I have to say that my feeling is a bit that the debate about disinformation, which I found to be like very complex and interesting social phenomenon, is tend to be sort of reductive from time to time. So between 2014, 2016, 17, we had a lot of debates about Russian influence operation and disinformation as one of their tools, which is of course very relevant, but it is not 100%. And currently, my feeling is that we are moving a bit in the space where the social networks and online platforms are actually very much perceived as a center of the problem. It's sort of, we will deal with the Facebook and then the problem will be solved. But I am afraid that this is not the right attitude. This is not the right understanding. I'm not saying that we should not be talking about the online platforms, and we will do so, but I think that we always have to take into an account that these problems are going far way beyond the new information space, but are very much interlinked with current geopolitical struggle, with genuine dissatisfaction with our democracies and stuff like so. From my perspective, like the solution to the problem is lying still in the space and in the relation between the citizen and its state and the society. So basically, the answer to this kind of first question, yes, it is important, or like the online platforms can help in a way, but we shouldn't overstate their influence. If they are doing enough, I think it's very good that we already moved from this stage of denial, of this stage when these platforms were not willing to acknowledge that their, let's say, sort of negative externalities of their operations are having serious impact on society. And I think that we definitely should appreciate that there are attempts to find solution to this challenge. The solutions, the attempts that are likely to be, let's say, that there's going to be a lot of sort of, try and fail attempts, and we have to. I think that we have to have like very open conversation about what is working or not, and we should definitely push for greater transparency or responsibility of the platforms. And from my perspective, like the US presidential election this year will be like a very interesting test of the way how the platforms are able to tackle the challenge and which approaches are working and why and which are not and why they are not working. So I would definitely keep an eye on that one thing. However, I think that the answer is not actually whether we should encourage or oblige them to get to, let's say, to do something with this challenge, because we have to do something with this challenge anyway. Because, for example, when we're looking at the European Union regulations, we found out that like the newest regulation of digital market is like 20 years old. And regardless of the disinformation, regardless of the online platforms, we definitely need some sort of some sort of let's say new approach, and taking into account the way how much the information environment around us has changed. And online platforms has to be the part of this conversation, but they still has to be let's say has to be partners, but let's say the member state as well as European Union still has to be the one who will be in the end like making the rules and making sure that the rights of the citizens are not limited, and that the proper legislation is taken in place.
Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time. So, Victoras, can we have a very quick statement from you as well, and Magdalena, 30 seconds on this aspect on platforms?
Sure, I will be really brief. So first, as internet started, everything was very open and very dispersed between different domains and different organizations. When social media appeared, they started to take over large part of the internet. Even some researchers, they consider that social media is the new internet. And in Africa, people are using social media as the new internet. They even don't consider that it's internet. And here is the question, how social media organizations are profiting from this. And since they control large part of advertising revenue around the world, so they take a big chunk, and they are very effective because algorithms are being able to show the ads in a targeted way very, very well. And this reduces the revenue from other organizations like media, and journalists are not getting their salaries. So I would say that social media has to become much, much more open, and they are taking the first steps to open more and more data, and that is good and crucial. And I would say more platforms, the more platforms will open their data to researchers and analysts and journalists, the better society and the safer society we will have. So that would be the endpoint. And of course, long-term solution is education. We need to work with educational system, but that will deliver results only in 20 to 30 years. So we need to think of more actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoras. And the last 20 seconds for a closing statement from Magdalena.
Well, no pressure. So I do believe that actually online platforms are crucial in this process. Like really, the internet without this online platform wouldn't be the same. And, the thing with social media is that everyone can be the journalist in the social media. And because I have the credibility, because my friends on Facebook or Twitter, my followers are trusting me, I have even bigger, problems when I spread some fake news. And it's easy to do so when you're just clicking on the news. So the online platform are very born on this discussion in my idea. And we had this information for a very long time, but with online platform, it began to look much different. And we saw it in 2016. We probably will see it nowadays also. And in this area, I'm really waiting for the new regulation in the European Union, the Digital Services Act. I hope it will bring some answers. We already have GDPR in place. We are still waiting on a privacy. So I hope it will put in place very fast. But it needs to be done with cooperation with online platforms, because they understand what's happening right now. After 2016, they knew how big this issue is. And I think even they were much surprised how important role they could play in the election or the stabilization of the country. So they are the crucial part in this process, and they really need to be taken in the discussion and bring to the table to find the answers of the problem.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. Thank you very much, all three. It has been a wonderful panel and very interesting to me, at least. I hope the audience has enjoyed it as well. So, over to the organizers. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much. The message that you share is generally optimistic and luckily doesn't bring to mind Pink Floyd's quite pessimistic "Together we stand, divided we fall," but sounds much closer to the more optimistic version of the saying by Marillion, "Divided we stand, together we'll rise," if anyone still remembers the songs from the 1980s.